Before this story begins, take a moment to subscribe to my channel. These are not just stories. They are lived moments. Moments that test the human heart, stretch morality, and leave us asking, what would I have done differently? What I saw that night changed everything. And before you judge me, ask yourself this. Would you have stayed? Or would you have walked away? As I stepped inside, the sight before me was nothing short of astonishing. I froze. Not because of fear, but because of recognition. Some moments don't arrive loudly. They slip into your life quietly, wearing the disguise of an ordinary night. And only later do you realize that everything changed the moment you crossed the threshold. My name is Elena. I'm 47 years old, a nurse by profession, a mother by necessity, and until recently, a woman who believed she had everything under control. Life taught me otherwise. My days followed a rigid pattern. Wake up. Make breakfast. Argue gently with my teenage son, Zifa, about school. Work brutal nursing shifts under fluorescent lights. Come home exhausted. Repeat. I had survived a divorce that hollowed me out more than I ever admitted. I told myself I stayed strong for Zifa. But the truth? I stayed strong because I didn't know how to fall apart. Nursing had taught me how fragile people truly are. Night shifts showed me humanity at its rawest. Pain, regret, desperation. And slowly, without realizing it, that weight followed me home. Bowling saved me. It sounds ridiculous, I know. But when you've spent years carrying other people's pain, you'll cling to anything that gives you silence inside your head. Rolling that ball down the lane. Watching it spin, glide, collide. It was the only time my thoughts stopped screaming. I joined a local league in Riverside just to stay sane. I didn't expect to be good, but I was. Good enough to qualify for a regional tournament in Springfield, 3 hours away. For the first time since my divorce, I felt like Elena again, not just mom or nurse. Excitement didn't last long. Zifa was 14. That age where childhood fades, but adulthood hasn't arrived yet. He was restless, curious, quiet in ways that made me nervous. I remembered the last time I'd left him alone overnight. The garage incident. The apology that followed. The promise I made to myself that it wouldn't happen again. So instead of choosing between my passion and my responsibility, I chose both. I booked a hotel near the tournament venue. Indoor pool. Breakfast buffet. A small adventure we could share. That morning, I woke before sunrise. I watched Zifa sleep for a moment longer than necessary. It's strange how motherhood works. One day you're tying their shoes. The next, you're wondering when they grew taller than you. Breakfast was simple. Pancakes stacked high, syrup dripping onto the plate. He smiled. And that alone made the entire trip worth it. After breakfast, he asked about a mall nearby. There was a game he'd been looking for. GameStop. The price made my chest tighten. But the way his eyes lit up, the way he tried not to ask outright, that mattered more than money. I paid. Not because I could afford it, but because love doesn't always make sense on paper. The Springfield bowling tournament was intense. Bright lights, polished lanes, crowds murmuring behind you. I started strong. Then fatigue crept in. By the final rounds, my arms trembled. Not from weakness, but exhaustion. I finished 5th. Disappointment burned. But my teammate Serafina won. And somehow, that softened the loss. Sleep didn't come easily. My mind replayed the day. The mall. The game. The tournament. The smile at breakfast. Around 3 a.m., I heard movement. Not fear. Just awareness. I stood in the doorway longer than I should have. Not because something was wrong, but because something was changing. And I felt it. That was the moment I realized something terrifying. I wasn't afraid of losing control. I was afraid of acknowledging how close I was to the edge. I stepped back, closed the door, sat on my bed shaking. Because being a parent isn't just about love. It's about boundaries. And that night, I chose to confront the truth instead of running from it. I didn't need escape. I needed help. Morning came quietly. Pancakes again. Laughter. Normalcy. But inside I was changed. That trip forced me to see something I'd ignored for years. Unhealed pain doesn't disappear. That weekend didn't end my struggles. It revealed them. and what I chose to do afterward. That's the part people don't expect. Because sometimes the bravest decision isn't giving in. It's stepping back. It waits. The hardest part wasn't the night itself. It was the silence that followed. Silence has a way of amplifying truths you've been avoiding. The kind that presses against your chest when the house is still. When the morning light creeps in without asking permission. I smiled over breakfast. I joked with Zifa. I packed our bags. But inside something was cracking. I wasn't ashamed of loving my child. I was ashamed of realizing how close emotional exhaustion can bring a person to confusion. And that terrified me. The drive back from Springfield felt longer than the drive there. Zifa slept most of the way, headphones on, his world contained in music and dreams. I watched the road blur past, mile after mile, replaying moments I couldn't undo. Not actions. Thoughts. Thoughts are dangerous when left unchecked. I realized something uncomfortable but important. Burnout doesn't just steal your energy, it steals your clarity. People assume strong women don't break. They do. They just do it quietly. I had spent years being the reliable one. At work. At home. Everywhere. No one noticed the cracks forming, because I learned how to hide them well. Strength without rest becomes recklessness. And I had been resting nowhere. Monday morning came too fast. Back to scrubs. Back to monitors beeping. Back to patients who needed me fully present. But I wasn't. A senior nurse noticed first. "Elena," she said gently. "You're here, but you're not here." That sentence landed harder than any criticism ever could. Asking for help feels like failure when you've been the helper your entire life. But that week I finally did. I scheduled therapy. Not because I was falling apart. But because I didn't want to. The therapist didn't judge me. That surprised me. She listened. She asked questions that didn't accuse, but uncovered. How long have you been living on autopilot? When did you stop seeing yourself as a person, not just a role? What scares you most right now? The answer came out before I could stop it. Becoming someone I don't recognize. Healing isn't dramatic. It's uncomfortable. It's realizing that exhaustion can blur boundaries. Not because you're immoral, but because you're human. She explained something that changed everything for me. When emotional needs go unmet for too long, the mind looks for connection anywhere it can feel alive again. Not love. Not desire. Relief. That weekend I sat down with Zifa. Not to confess. Not to scare him. But to reconnect. I apologized. For being distant. For being tired. For assuming providing was enough. He surprised me. "You're a good mom," he said. "You just never stop." That broke me. From that day forward, things changed. Small changes at first. Shorter shifts when possible. Bowling for joy, not pressure. Actual rest, not just sleep. Saying no without guilt. Boundaries aren't walls. They're guardrails. 6 months later, another tournament invitation arrived. This time I hesitated. Then I smiled. Because I wasn't running anymore. I wasn't escaping. I was choosing. I am still a nurse. Still a mother. Still flawed. But I am also present. I understand now that healing doesn't mean pretending you never struggled. It means facing the struggle honestly, and refusing to let it define you. I didn't tell this story for sympathy. I told it because silence keeps people trapped. Because burnout doesn't announce itself loudly. Because loving deeply without caring for yourself can lead you dangerously close to losing who you are. If you're listening to this and feel stretched thin, if you feel disconnected from yourself, if you're carrying more than you can safely hold, please hear this. Pausing is not weakness. Asking for help is not failure. Choosing clarity over chaos is courage. There's one final chapter one haven't shared yet. The moment that confirmed I was truly healing. The moment I realized that some lines, once acknowledged, never need to be crossed. And how choosing differently saved more than just me.